Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inclusive Strategies for PE. It is a crazy 2020 min shape, but we're here and we're virtual and it's going to be awesome. So thank you for those of you joining me today. My name is Jen Heebink and I am a full-time adapted PE teacher in Buffalo at Buffalo Community Middle School and Buffalo High School. I am starting my 11th year, so I have 10 years of experience, and I attended UW River Falls graduated in 2010. So if you are a Falcon, I'm one of you. Go Falcons. And I have the amazing, grateful pleasure of saying that I'm the 2020 Men's Shape Adapted PE Teacher of the Year in the middle of a pandemic. It was definitely a silver lining, and I'm so stinking grateful for just everything that's kind of lined up and been this year. Even though it's been really, really hard, this has been a silver lining. So I'm just really grateful. And so if you are not on Twitter and you want to be and you want to follow me, or if you're already on Twitter and don't follow me, at Jen Heebink is my Twitter handle, and jheebink at bhmschools.org. If you need to email me later, if you want to talk about unified PE, I will talk your ear off. But I want to tell you that no matter what your job is as a phy-ed teacher, or if you're just jumping in and joining and you're a health teacher, or if you're in higher ed, man, this is the place to be, because we're going to talk about the power of inclusion and some strategies that we can use, and just simple strategies and some more complex strategies and a culture shift strategy, actually. So just looking at some learning targets, and I'm sorry if you can't see behind my face, I'm going to try and move my face to the other side here. But we're going to try and see how we can shift our perspective towards inclusion. We are going to be able to explore flexibility with our own equipment and try to include all students. And we are going to become familiar with how switch work works as an inclusion strategy. And we're going to explore how unified PE uses inclusion as a strategy as well. So some really interesting things to be looking at here. We're going to I'm going to try and kind of talk about perception first, and then I'm going to talk about the three strategies. So the flexibility with equipment, familiarity with switch work, and unified PE, all three of those things, okay? So the first thing I really want to talk about, and I use this in my unified PE class when we're talking to our partners without disabilities, we talk about the power of perception, because when you look at this, did you immediately see the 6 or did you immediately see the 9? The reason why we see the world a certain way is how we've taken in the world a certain way. All of our senses, our experiences, all that plays into how we see the world. And so if we have never experienced a teaching strategy when it comes to inclusion, and tried some new things when it comes to working with kids that are different than other kids, and in reality, all kids are different, right? But just knowing that if we never walk to the other side of the number, we will never understand. And if we never walk to try and understand somebody else's story on the other side of the number, then we're going to be yelling at each other all day. There's no empathy there, right? If we walk to the other side of the number, there's empathy. We try and understand, and then we grow as human beings and in character to be a stronger society when we understand each other that way. So we have a giant lesson about how people's experiences and stories are so important, and your story is important too. And so when we walk to the other side of the number, some crazy awesome things happen. Okay, and here we go. I'm going to move this over here. So I want to know, and all of us have been there, have you ever had a student that feels difficult to teach? Or maybe you've heard a heartbreaking comment from a colleague that says, I just can't teach that kid. And maybe it's because they're in a wheelchair, or maybe you have a kid with a lot of behavior that you're like, I'm at my wit's end, I can't teach. Like, I wonder why we're saying that. And I wonder if we can press into those hard conversations, because maybe it's our perception of ourselves and our stories that kind of play into the word I can't. Um, and maybe we've never taught a kid that looks like that or throws like that or kicks like that or cannot throw like that. Maybe we need to explore how we're feeling about that, because when excuse me, when we tell a kid that they can't be a part of something, then that kind of cuts off the dream and the opportunity for them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. Let's talk about the power of can for a second. Okay, so again, I'm going to move my face. Sorry if you can't read that, but I want you to know that as a Phi Ed and adapted PE teacher, we have the power to literally change a culture, and not just for recreation and leisure, but for student opportunity. And we need to remind ourselves to stop thinking about what our kids cannot do and ask ourselves, what can this student do? Maybe they have a unique disability. I love how Jody Duff, National DAPE Teacher of the Year a couple years back, calls them disabilities. We all have different abilities. And some of our students have some really unique things that maybe we've never seen before. Students, you are in higher ed right now, and you are preparing for students with disabilities that you have never experienced before. And even I, as a DAPE teacher, I have students with disabilities that I've never seen before. But we have to start saying we can, because we get to empower our students. We get to create the opportunity that they've never maybe experienced before, because everybody says they can't. Why can't we be the ones that say they can? That's my challenge to you. So when going forward with inclusion, we have to stop saying that kid can't throw, that kid can't catch. We need to start thinking, what can our kids do? All right. And that comes from Jody Duff. That inspired me a lot. But we should be thinking that all the time. So here's a quote that I wrote couple years ago right now. Yeah, a couple years ago, for my unified PE class, because I was feeling like it was very awkward. But if we press into the awkward, weird, different, unique space between what you know and what you don't, this is how we will change the world. And I keep going back to this quote because now we're in a pandemic and everything is awkward, upside down, weird, different, chaotic, but we're pushing into that unknown space. And this is where world change happens. This is where bravery and courage happen. This is where things happen that maybe we've never done before, but we have the courage to do so. But recognizing that space and teaching our kids to recognize that space, cheering them on and championing them into this space is huge, because that's when they learn bravery. Okay. So we know now, we can't say we can't teach those kids because under the state standards in Minnesota, all students need to be taught the Minnesota State PE standards, and all means all. So we need to figure out how to get our students working in those standards. And that's when you collaborate with your DAPE teacher. That's where you collaborate with case managers. Hey, what works best for teaching this kid? I love Shelley Moore as we're getting into inclusion strategies, because this is kind of what she came out with. She is a amazing researcher, teacher, and she has a disability herself. But she talks about the evolution of inclusion, and we can see this as evolution from like the 1900s into now, but we can also see where our class is in inclusion, and maybe we're in this area, one of these bubbles, as we speak today. So I want you guys to think about which bubble is my class? What does it look like? So back in like the 1900s, we had no inclusion of people with disabilities or mental health issues, and anybody that was different, we did not have in school. They were excluded. Race and everything was it was different, right? And then we had segregation, where we had bubbles of people who were different that would have their own space, their own school. but you still did not see people with disabilities or different abilities that seemed different in school. Um, and then we said, well, let's have integration. And that's where these pods of students who are different would come in and work in their own little pod within the regular class. And then we have full inclusion, which is what I'm going to talk about with unified PE, where every single student, no matter what your ability, comes together and we do class. And the thing that's different between integration and inclusion is that we don't have pods. We don't have, we have more empathy and compassion. We have understanding between the colored dots, the green dots being our students without disabilities, and the colored dots are students with different abilities. And so the thing is, you can look through your class right now and just think, wow, where's my class at? Do I have anyone with different abilities in my class? You're probably not purposefully excluding them, but maybe, maybe you can start advocating, hey, I want students in my class that have some disabilities. I want to be able to work with some people. I want to maybe stop the, it doesn't seem initially like integration, but we have pods of students in our Phi-Ed classes that all work together in one pod and never get to know anyone outside their little group with their para, and the para does things, or the para says, or the teacher is sending students to class, but the para is being sent to the far side of the gym and doing something with the students. And maybe that's their least restrictive environment, but maybe it's not. Maybe we just need students and teachers to say, hey, you're welcome to come join us. Here are the things I'm going to try and do to help you feel included. We always talk about in Unified PE, inclusion is everybody always. So getting into the different things. Now I'm going to walk through some different strategies, but talking about different movement, different sports, and then what kind of flexibility with equipment and how to set up a switch, what it looks like to have a switch, and unified PE. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these strategies. So some of these initial strategies will be with your equipment. What's in your closet? What can you change up in your closet? And the reason why I ask that is, first of all, what benchmark are you trying to address in your class? Which benchmarks? And does it have to be that piece of equipment? And the reason why we're talking about that is because a lot of times with the benchmarks, it does not tie you into a specific piece of equipment. So if the standard benchmark, I think this is, and I just spelled benchmark wrong, I just realized that, so I'm not a good speller, but if the benchmark says throwing overhand with accuracy to a target, this means that you have the freedom in your class to use a variety of items within your lesson. So our students that struggle with grip strength, maybe we're not using a ball, but maybe we're using a beanbag that has a little bit more weight and they can kind of grasp it a little bit easier. Or maybe instead of a football, are you in a football unit? You could use a gator ball for football and have it be softer and have kids work up to the level of football too. A lot of kids have a hard time throwing a football. And I don't have any knocks against football, but I see kids being able to get more confident and excited when they can use different pieces of equipment. Kind of makes it exciting too. You have the variety there. But my big thing is, don't get stuck on one piece of equipment. If the variety will help your kids demonstrate competence in that benchmark. So let's talk about switch work really quick. I have a couple of videos in here on how I set up my switch, and hopefully you'll just be able to check in with a case manager and they will be able to show you that. I also use a leaf blower for launching, and this is the one that I have. It's pretty simple. I keep the edge, down here, the blower part to this edge. There's another kind that's a little bit different, but it's just that kind of tip. So I also have my leaf blower you're going to see in my videos hooked up to a bowling ramp. But you would also need an extension cord, probably 2 extension cords to plug into the wall. So let's go ahead and talk about the switch. So this is the AbleNet PowerLink interface. And I love this one because once you get the power source, let's say you have the leaf blower plugged in here, you can turn it on and the switch is actually Bluetooth, and you can have multiple switches. So if you have a couple of students that need switches, I like this one a lot. And you can get that, you can kind of check it out at ablenet.com. This is my Jelly Belly, or not my Jelly Belly, my Jelly Bean. I'll show you it in the video, but I love this one because I can hold it in my hand. It's not too huge. And again, it's Bluetooth. It turns on with batteries. There's also an auxiliary in there. So, but I will show you some of this. One important thing when you're talking about switches is what part of the body can my student use? And I'm talking about students that may have low core and upper limb strength, students that may be in a wheelchair, or maybe some of our autistic students that just need to move, and we kind of need to engage them and kind of work on some of those striking skills, or object control skills that might be extremely difficult, or maybe it's a social skill that our students with autism aren't able to maybe work with partners, but if they work with a switch and work with a partner, you're going to see that in my video too. So can a student hit a switch with their hand? Can they tap it with the finger? Can they move their neck if they don't have any other control? Some of my students have used head switches. Can you put it underneath their toe? Maybe our students have movement in their foot, but maybe not a lot elsewhere. Just be open to that. Students can move with different parts of their bodies, different limbs, stuff like that. So what can our students use? So here is my video of the switch. It's plugged into the wall, and then you can flip it on. And as you can see, you'll be able to pick the mode. I like that direct mode. And then you can kind of set the number of seconds that you want to turn the leaf blower or the floor fan on. I usually choose like 3 seconds. Because some of my students, you know, if I want them to, and there you can see I have two power sources. Some of my students, I want them to hold that switch longer, and sometimes I just have to make it happen through the switch. So here is the Jelly Belly, or the Jelly Bean. I always say Jelly Belly, but this is the Jelly Bean, and it's nice to kind of tap. It's got that red cover, turns on with that switch. Tap the top, has a little auxiliary plug-in if we need it, and it does work with batteries. And again, it's Bluetooth. This kind of switch, if you drop it, the top will come off, but I just kind of like turn it and screw it back on, and it seems to be okay. But if you have a kid that throws stuff, this one, you might just have to hold for the student. So, but here's the thing, when working with switches, I am blown away by how much it helps our students become engaged with other students. Some of our kids who use switches are so excluded that they don't know what it feels like to be a part of a skill game or any kind of game. So using that switch, it increases the partner play. It increases the character of the kid that is playing with the student with the switch, because all of a sudden they have a mutual connection. It reduces the para and staff support, and that hand over hand, and reinforces other goal areas. So I know, like, when kids get to middle school, they do not want to have like an adult over them at all times. That's just awkward. Like, middle schoolers are awkward to begin with, but to have an adult be that one that's over your shoulder and moving your hands, and especially in high school, you're getting ready to get out of high school and you still got an adult, like, that's let's get rid of that as much as we can. Like, obviously we're going to have some needs, but if we can help increase that independence, that's fantastic. And, you know, some of our students with switches, they might have goals where they're exploring job opportunities. And I know one of my students is working on a blender, and the way that I figured this out, I'm like, if my student can start a blender with a switch, they can for sure turn on a a leaf blower to launch a ball. Like, let's start being creative and thinking outside the box. Like, I was like, this is mind blowing to me. It's so great. Um, so like I said, using the switch has really been like life changing because my student, when I first got to my job, I literally had no idea how to engage students with severe multiple impairments. Um, Specifically the ones that would need switch work, and I just always let the pairs play, and the pairs would have a blast playing, and I'm like, oh, they're having a great time. But really, am I engaging that student in the object control activity or the striking activity? Mm, Maybe not. But the thing is, I don't know about you, but for me, when I figure out that something is not working and it starts to bug me, and like all of a sudden I need to like figure it out and go to the depths of the earth to figure it out. And I know when Jody Duff did her presentation on switch work, I was like, okay, I know what to do. Like, this is going to work for my students. And this, you're gonna see some of my videos and some of the opportunities here. Like, you can literally do anything as long as you feel that flexibility and the ability to use those switches. So again, thinking outside the box, I'm going to help you get there, because I did not used to think outside the box, but now our students, our partner work, striking the soccer ball back and forth, um, being able to have a common bond for football. I had a couple of football players in my unified PE class, and they had a really hard time engaging with a student who is nonverbal, needed a switch, but also loved football, and they just didn't know how to talk to each other. But when we figured out this whole switch thing, well, now they have a common bond, and oh my goodness, it was so fun to see just the compassion and empathy grow, and just our kid with a switch be able to feel included. Oh, it was so great. So anyway, and then unified PE, I'm going to talk about unified PE. Um, so unified PE, what is it? So for those of you who are familiar with Special Olympics, just a really quick brief history. The last 50 years, we've gone from institutionalization to Eunice Kennedy creating Special Olympics because of her sister. They did not want to institutionalize her sister. Little known fact, Rosemary Kennedy, JFK and Eunice Kennedy's sister, would have been institutionalized because she had an intellectual disability. But they started creating opportunities like Special Olympics. And the last 50 years has been about that, creating opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities to participate in sports. But the next 50 years, because of how we've grown and policy and legislation that protects people with disabilities a little bit more, the Special Olympics is trying to create opportunities for people to do sports and all sorts of activities, but people with and without disabilities together, because we've found that when we partner together with our friends without disabilities and with disabilities, it's powerful. And I see it in my class every day. So anyway, so students with and without disabilities come together in physical education class. And it's all students learning, all students addressing the standards. For my class, I actually teach the class, so it's actually their adapted PE time. And I have mentors who are partners that sign up for the elective. But it's an inclusive class culture that goes way beyond the classroom. It is culture change. I mean, culture change. Okay. So how this works for me. So you could be a unified PE class, or you can kind of go beyond that and you can become a champion unified school. And what that means is that you have a unified PE class, or you have unified sports. Not all schools have unified PE that have unified sports. Um, and so you also have a unified student leadership. So that is like if you think of like student council, that our student leadership is people with and without disabilities that come together and make decisions and plan opportunities for our friends with and without disabilities. For me, that's my Bison connection. But unified whole school engagement. That's like if you've ever done the spread the word to end the word campaign or words matter or person first. It's a school-wide engagement, but Special Olympics gives us the kit to be able to reach out into our school culture and start raising awareness and advocating for change, for people to understand that people with disabilities matter. All people matter. So what happens here is when you have that special honor and label with Special Olympics is that it's easier for you to engage your community and change lives for inclusion. And kids with and without disabilities find ownership in what they learn. And we talk about social justice, we talk about advocacy, and it's easy opportunities to fundraise for things that you could never normally do. We do polar plunge, we do, what else do we do? We went to Unified Night Out, Mall of America. We ran around Mall of America and rode rides and raised money for it. It was fantastic. And then kids really just live for Unified PE. So just to give you an example, in our first 2 years at BHS and last year, our first year at BCMS, we've taught kids how to shut down the R word, to stand up, to find their voice. Both students with and without disabilities find their voice. They increase their relationships. They have a high level of empathy and compassion. Culture wave of change, I've been talking about that. And our students, they come out wanting to be inclusive business owners, lawyers for people with disabilities, inclusive doctors. Understand, like, can you imagine like having a whole world of these people being so inclusive, and being able to, and our friends feel equipped to press into relationships with people who are different. And our friends without disabilities, it's that relationship part where I can start to be brave in the hallway and in the community. And now someone in the community knows me and they can hire me. Like, it is a culture change. It is good. It is so good. So we have leadership lessons. We teach kids about having intellectual disabilities, inclusive leadership, and ability awareness. And then we allow our partners without disabilities to reflect every Friday on what we are learning. And our athletes do that too. Our athletes are our friends with disabilities, and they complete simple reflections because all people, right? We include everybody. So yeah, that's kind of just a brief rundown. There is a unified PE resource manual that has curriculum ideas in it, and maybe how to set up your class a little bit, and leadership curriculum. So this is the link for that. Just Google unified PE resource manual, it comes right up. Okay, so we're gonna walk through each of the movement areas and kind of give you some ideas for inclusion. And I'm whipping out ideas that I've used and some that I've come up with over the summer, my pandemic ideas. Let's talk about warm-ups. So I know some of our teachers have expectations for warm-ups. Some things that will help students is just giving them choices. And we all need to work on warm-ups and locomotors. So let's help kids be confident and kind of work their way up onto those things. Continuing, one of my favorite things to work on with our students with wheelchairs is it's not just rolling across the gym. Let's adapt and use our arms and kind of warm up our upper body and march and do all those things. So just being sure to give a shout out to our friends who have some mobility issues and just say, hey, how are you doing? Let's get your body moving and kind of give them some ideas. You can talk to your DAPE teachers if you need help with that. But choices are really good, and let's build up the confidence so we can all do well. Let's talk about virtual classrooms. Okay, so for virtual classrooms, I learned something between the DAPE conference and now. I did a giant presentation on building your virtual classroom, and then I went on Twitter where all the good ideas are and where I got all my good ideas. But I found a virtual classroom that looked like this, and I was like, duh, my kids are in wheelchairs. Like, representation matters. Can your students perform your virtual classroom activities from a chair? If you have students in wheelchairs or, autism and gosh, just being aware of like the story of your classroom, that perception of your classroom. Like we've experienced our teaching through, you know, everybody moves the way that we want them to, but in reality, like we have some friends who are really struggling with feeling included. And so if we can include, wheelchairs and just different ways of doing our virtual classroom where representation shows up and matters, that was huge. I also had a friend who, let's see, did she? I think I did. So this is a Twitter friend who's fantastic, but she came up with this. Sorry. So we do Just Dance all the time. Let's see if I can turn this up. There we go. So we do Just Dance all the time, and then I never realized my students are in wheelchairs and everything is always standing up. And so when she did this, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Like it would take a lot of work, but I think I'm going to take some time to do it. And I'm going to pull up the app really quick. It's called Perfect Video. And she goes through and she does all these little fantastic things. This is Nicole McCoy. She's fantastic if you follow her on Twitter, and McCoy _ APE. But I'm going to do some of this. So I just wanted to show you that really quick. Just representation matters. Okay, moving on. Sorry if that was noisy and weird. Let's get back into this. So onward, let's talk about net games really quick. I love net games, especially in Unified PE. Some things to recognize. Are you stuck within your equipment, within the standards? You kind of got to go look at the standards, but if you're able to differentiate, if you're using tennis balls, can you use beach balls instead? Maybe work your way up to tennis balls. Can you use Ominikins to do some of that team building activities? And even some of the smaller Ominikins are so fun to just strike like giant volleyballs. When you're doing badminton, that's the word I wanted. When you're doing badminton, can you find some bigger birdies? Sometimes those smaller birdies are even hard for our students without disabilities. One way that I found big birdies was, I think they have them at Five Below, but I got mine for free in one of those teacher sales in the teacher's lounge, and it had like the mesh rackets, and I'm like, this is perfect, so perfect. And they're one of my favorite birdies. So also just thinking about your net, do you have to have the net at regular height? Maybe we can work towards that, but maybe you lower the net until you see success. Or I mean, you can challenge kids also, but also jump ropes work as nets, especially if you're in that small space, lines on the floor, or maybe even no lines, just working on that striking. What kind of equipment do you have in your closet, and how do you feel stuck in that equipment, or do you feel like you could differentiate and give a variety? Some ideas I have for students with low grip strength. We have DISM that we work. If you talk to your district-wide physical therapist, if you have students with low grip strength, I'm going to grip this, and you're doing like a rolling, like a balancing on the paddle drill. So if you have like the ball on top and it's rolling, some of our students have a really hard time just holding it because of their grip strength. So we have DISM that we like to add to our paddles. And then if you just put like a beanbag on it, so then they're able to work on that grip strength and balance like everybody else. Another thing that I've done for students, because he was able to, I'll stand up, because he was able to hold stronger under his armpit, I extended the racket. Instead of holding on to just the racket, he was kind of squeezing it with his arm. And then he was able to hold the ball on there and kind of drive his scooter around and look like everybody else joining in. So just being aware of what what strengths students have is huge. And then another thing, can we isolate the arm activity to focus on just arms rather than arms and legs? We got to simplify sometimes. This was something I learned from Mr. Luke Schatz over in Oregon, another adapted physical education teacher of the year, national teacher of the year. But you can use chairs in PE if you really want to just focus on that arm movement. Notice I'm using a beach ball here. It's a little bit lighter. And yeah, I was super proud of this student. She was calm. She was sitting in her chair and allowing us to work. And she's doing that independently too. I'm so proud of her. So, okay, so here's some switch work for volleyball. So again, I have that plugged into my switch. Notice the airflow. This is a Walmart playground ball. And this is my little Hannah. She is going to show that step, swing back, swing forward. I'm picturing this instead of maybe some of us use those, the giant cones for isolating and striking. But if you have a student and you're working in like pairs, and our student who hits the switch would then be able to engage with the activity. Huge. When you've had a student who's never been able to engage in that kind of activity or social play activity, partner play activity, it's huge. So that is volleyball. Here's another volleyball one, and this one's kind of cute. I want you to watch it to the end. Boop, there's my Hannah, and doot, love it. So as you can see, this is my leaf blower. It's held up by, I kind of jerry rigged it, but it's got some bungee cords, and this is actually a ramp, a bowling ramp that I have. You can talk to your adapted Phy Ed teachers if you need to borrow a ramp or order one. But this is also one of those, I think is it finger light balls. It's like a balloon ball, but there's no latex in it, and they fly. They're fantastic. So watch what happens now. I hit the switch. Boop. So this could also be like a partner play activity. So there you have it. Let's move on. This is unified volleyball. So I set up my switch here in the corner because that's where my outlet is. You have to be really careful with the cord. So I don't let kids move too much. We're playing King of the Court here, and it's a fast moving game. It's a Walmart ball. We have our student in the switch and student with the switch, and we're playing a team game. And all of a sudden that student who has struggled to be included in a volleyball game, potentially a lot of her life, is a part of a team and now contributed to getting a point. Kind of fun. This student made a lot of friends in our class, so fun. Okay, so this is switch work with striking, baseball, and softball. So this again could act as a tee, and if you're working in teams, that kiddo hits the switch. Oops. Hannah doesn't really waste time. She winds up and has that. So again, have that floor fan just on the floor. You could also just have that airflow going on at all times if you have a student who's really working on contact. But again, just a regular beach ball. This is one of those Fisher-Price bats. You could use any plastic bat, but again, you hit the switch. You could also make the switch go for a few more seconds if you need to hold it longer. Here is another way that you can use this to launch for baseball. Okay, I had a student for the first time use a switch and pitch me the ball, and I almost cried because it was that social partner play that he had been missing out like his whole life with me, and I feel terrible because it was all me, but I figured it out and now I can do it. So, excuse me. So again, here is that ramp, the leaf blower, that Walmart ball, and Hannah is ready to hit the ball. Hitting the switch. Boom. Right? Okay, next one. Unified PE. So when we play wiffle ball or any of that with unified PE as an inclusion strategy, I was so blown away because the first year that I did all this, I was able to work up to like a real practice game, and it felt so fun. The kids get get so much out of it, and they coach each other, they cheer each other on, they have patience and empathy and compassion for each other, um and they also call each other out too. So partners and athletes, when we're playing, wiffle ball or softball, uh we also switch out the Walmart ball for the wiffle balls, and we switch out the bats for rackets, because why not? The goal is to strike, right? Are we stuck? At least for me, at the 9th through 12th grade, we aren't stuck into a piece of equipment here. Um, so that increases, and also unified, there's so much standard 5 going on. Something I thought about, and this goes back to something I learned a while back, when it comes to flexibility with equipment, like with roller skating and scooters. If you guys have like a skating unit, let's go beyond just pulling our students in wheelchairs and letting them pull others. Can we try and give our students in wheelchairs the feeling of what it feels like to have skates on? Can we put them on their feet, but then maybe pile up scooters to be able to have them feel the wheels under their feet? That's something that a really awesome DAPE teacher, and I can't remember her name, but she's retired now, but just giving those students the opportunity to feel what it feels like, is huge. And I know this is kind of separate from skating and scooters, but I had some students with visual impairments, and they had never felt the wind on their face from biking. And so I got a tandem bike, and the smile um, and just the ability to enjoy movement, their giggles as I'm biking around the parking lot with them, like the feeling of the wind on their face, I couldn't believe it. But that's why we got to give them that feeling, you guys. So basketball. Okay, so I have a couple of tweets, and I'm sorry if there's noise, but this first one, this flexibility with equipment, is one of the small groups in my class. Okay, so you're going to see the switch set up, and you're going to see the bleachers. I put hula hoops in the bleachers, and this student is using a switch. So here we have our student aiming for the regular hoop, the modified hoop, and our student using the switch, and that's that finger light ball, finger light or feather light, I can't remember. But this is the first time I felt so confident using basketball to teach all students, and using the switch to teach all students. It was so awesome. Okay, here's another one. This is my student using the switch, and he like hit it, and like we cheered so hard because he made a basket. He's never made a basket in my class. We never give him the opportunity. uh I give your kids the opportunity, because the feeling you feel inside as a teacher when they succeed is unlike any other, and your other students will witness that too, and they will make a connection to that student, let me tell you. And then this last one, I believe, is just another way that you can use the leaf blower as like a moving target passing kind of drill. So he hits a switch, and you can have one of those brute tubs, and you can put it on wheels, and then you could also use it as a moving target too. So that's a regular gator ball, and it has a little weight, but it still flies a little bit. So just be aware. Okay, basketball, moving on. Oh, here's the fun one. This was my pandemic find. I didn't have my bleachers, obviously, but I had one of those. We had like brute tubs or a recycling bin, so feather light balls. It's my little Hannah hitting the switch. Um, so yeah, there you go. Flexibility with equipment. Modify the heights. Do you have bleachers? Bleachers saved me. Okay. Um, Here's the deal with unified PE. My quarter 2 class, the first year I taught this class, my quarter 2 class, so it wasn't my first quarter, is the second quarter, I got all new kids. All they wanted to do, I would give them choice time, once every week or every couple of weeks. All they wanted to do was play basketball. And then I got an email from Special Olympics saying Waconia was going to have a basketball tournament, and we just showed up. We had never played as a team before. We maybe have a 10-minute practice, or just like during the school day class practice. And wow, kids walked out of Waconia and said, we need to do this at Buffalo. And that was their leadership. They pulled it off. They advocated for administration. I advocated for administration. I had parents saying, you have to have unified PE at Buffalo. And so last year was our first year hosting a unified basketball tournament. And our community went crazy for it. They would walk in with like, what are we even doing? And then they would walk out as like whole new people, and they would be having conversations about what inclusion looked like. And they were so surprised that everybody was cheering for everybody, no matter what team they were on. It was crazy. Unified PE and unified basketball, mind blowing. It's been our tool. It was more engaging than even spread the word to end the word. It was amazing. And I was hoping this year that we'd have a giant tournament and kind of make it bigger, but COVID. So we'll hopefully be able to do something next year. So soccer, this is just a really easy example. You hit the switch and floor fan, and all of a sudden my student who's never been able to strike a soccer ball now has the opportunity to play partner passing. Okay, and then for unified PE, we work our way up to like little mini scrimmages 4-on-4, and it's partner and teammate against 4 others, and always partnered up, partner and teammate, or what we call partner and teammate. People with and without disabilities always partner up. We never leave someone by themselves. But it's been really cool to see that process. So I was talking about the football situation. My student who loves football has never been able to call a play within my class, and never been able to be on a team. He's always just been kind of the manager, or, so here he calls the play. He wants me to be wide receiver. I love this. Oop, hold on. There's another finger light ball. I love this kid's smile. So good. So I'm wide receiver. He's quarterback. He launches it. Boom. You can use different targets too. You can use, laundry baskets, brute tubs, anything you want. Don't get stuck into the stuff that you've always done. Be creative. Here is a throwing at a target activity. If you want to hang hula hoops from your basketball hoop, you have 3 different opportunities. You can hit that hoop, you can hit the hoop underneath it, you can hit the lowest hoop, you could hit the hoops right in front, depending on what kind of balls that you have. So just knowing that that you have the opportunity to hit different targets is fantastic. All right, I'm gonna kind of work towards the end here. Bowling, you guys kind of probably have an idea of using that ramp and stuff. Head over to the bowling alley, bocce ball. I can show you these probably another time really quick. Skee ball, I'm really proud of this. Just creating that different experience. I love that. I was really proud of myself that I figured that out. But my question for you is, what kind of inclusion strategies are you going to take back with you from this? Have I shifted your perception of your own flexibility with equipment, with your inclusion strategies that you already use? Are you able to walk to the other side of the number and just experience someone else's story? So I want to leave you with the fact that you have a giant power and awesome opportunity to make a kid who has felt excluded part of a team, which could change their life. You could bring joy to a student. You could bring dreams and opportunities to students that have never had them before. That's the power that you have as a PHYED and adapted PHYED teacher. In higher ed, you are training teachers to give kids dreams. That's what you're doing. Your story in higher ed, you are so important. If you're a health teacher, we have unified wellness, and I could share a little bit about that too, but I'm going to save that for a different time. But unified PE, man, it's a heartbeat. It's not for all kids, but we have to be aware of what is going to work for our students. So what does teaching all students mean in your class and gym? Thank you so much for attending my session. I believe I'm out of time. You guys are awesome. If you have any questions, tweet me, email me. I hope that you have a great Minnesota Shape Conference. Talk to you guys later. Bye.